Hey, you there. Come on, take a break with us. So, what's in store for this break? Let's find out together here on It's Your Break. Welcome to It's Your Break. This is the bonus episode, which means it's the interview that we are doing in its entirety, not chopped up into 15-minute segments. It's just an alternative choice. And on this episode, we talk to Lora Cheadle, and we find out how she went from a corporate attorney to author, speaker, and burlesque dancer. And you'll find out how next. It's Your Break will return right after this.
Every year, millions of people travel to the Great Smoky Mountains, Pigeon Forge, and Gatlinburg to get engaged, to have their wedding, honeymoon, or even vacation. Wouldn't it be nice to commemorate these memories with real professional photos? Mountain Escape Photography can capture your family vacation, wedding, or engagement while using the Great Smoky Mountains as a backdrop. We're a Great Smoky Mountains National Park approved vendor, so we can shoot anywhere inside of the park. To see some of our work or to book your session, go to mountainescapephotography.com.
And now, back to It's Your Break. Welcome to It's Your Break. Hi, I'm Jonathan Mertz, and talk about being able to just change your career path and motivate others and do it a little risque. Lora Cheadle is a former corporate attorney turned author, speaker, and burlesque dancer. Yes, I said that right. Burlesque dancer. So I asked her on the show to tell her story of FLAUNT and how she came up with it and why she changed her career path. Lora, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just talk about real quick your history of why you left the world of corporate law.
That sounds great. I loved being a lawyer. There was so much that I loved about being a lawyer. I loved the research. I loved the writing. I loved a lot of things about it. But even though it was the 90s when I was a lawyer, it's not way back in the dark ages, I still felt very objectified by a lot of judges and male lawyers. I felt stereotyped, I felt judged, and I really got frustrated with having to fight just for my identity. I actually had one judge early on. It was actually my very first case as a student attorney. I won the case based on the merits, based on my research, based on my brains. And the judge called me into his office and said, "How dare you win a case against a well-established male attorney looking like that? How dare you have long hair? Why don't you put it up? How dare you show your thighs? Why don't you wear pants instead of a skirt? And how dare you come to court and smile with your clients and be friendly?" And it got old.
So, this sounds eerily familiar to me to a story called Legally Blonde.
It really does. And when that movie came out, I have so many friends from law school call me and say, "Was that story written about you?"
Are you Elle Woods?
I'm not, but I think perhaps her story was taken from mine.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but it goes to show that actually is not an unusual story. It happens to many women, and it's really frustrating.
So what was the tipping point that says, I'm going to move away from being a corporate attorney?
There were several different tipping points. I had had my second child, and I was really struggling to do it all because, you're raised to believe you can do it all. You can be a full-time mom. You can be a successful lawyer. You can do all of this stuff. And I just felt that everything was imploding in on me. I couldn't do all of the emotional work at home. I couldn't do raising the kids. I couldn't do all of that. And then at the same time, I started really feeling frustrated because as a lawyer, I was cleaning up messes. I wasn't really solving problems. And the whole reason I went to law school was because I wanted to help people solve problems, not create, just, clean up the mess. So that's when I thought, you know what? This is going to be a perfect time to go back to school, to change my career, to start studying different modalities and seeing if I can actually start making a difference in people's lives before they have legal problems.
That's a cool idea.
It was.
That is really cool. So you went on this career path. You went back to school. Then what happened to you? How did you? Basically, I guess I want to figure out, how did you end up in burlesque?
Exactly.
Because I mean that's just such a far spectrum from what a corporate attorney is. And to be honest, let's clear this up too. Burlesque isn't necessarily a strip dance, correct?
No, correct. Burlesque comes from the root word burla, which means mockery or parody. And it pokes fun of things that are taboo in our society. It pokes fun of hypocritical behavior. And the reason semi-nudity is sometimes used is because in our culture, female nudity is seen as taboo. And a burlesque show will sometimes play with the idea of nudity and, ooh, did you see something you're not supposed to see? And it's actually not that far of a stretch, and here's why. I grew up, like many, many, many little girls, dancing and playing and really having fun being active and being physical. Then as you grow up and you're told that you have to be a certain size and be a certain weight and look a certain way, the act of playing and running and dancing suddenly becomes a have to. I have to work out. I have to keep myself in shape. I have to. And it's not fun anymore. Well, somewhere along the line, I thought, I miss dancing. I've been so in my head. I've been so legal. I've been so, philosophical, and I want to get back into my body and I want to start dancing again. Well, I found a dance studio, but as you can imagine, a mom who's working and who's going back to school and doing all of this stuff, I didn't have a lot of time. And the only class that was available was a burlesque class. And I thought, well, I don't really know what that is, but it's available, so I'm going to go. And I went. I took the class. I fell in love with the intellectual nature of burlesque. I fell in love with that whole parody, mockery. I fell in love with the entire art form. I started studying it. And just like with anything, when I go into something, I go in all the way. A month later, I had auditioned for a burlesque troupe. 2 months later, I was dancing in Las Vegas.
That's interesting. So how old were you at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 44.
Wow. So it's kind of unheard of to hear somebody in that age being able to migrate into that type of career, because there are some body standards,
yeah.
Especially in Vegas. You would expect some of that to be playing into the factors.
Yes, absolutely. And again, that was why I loved burlesque so much and why it captivated me, because I was so into pushing into the stereotype. I was really enraged my whole life as I would be judged and I would be labeled and stereotyped and put in boxes. And my rebellion, so to speak, was saying, oh yeah, watch me. If you don't think I can be smart and pretty, smart and spiritual, a good mother and dance burlesque, watch me. I will do it. And that's kind of the energy that I went into my burlesque career with. You think I'm old? Watch me. I'm fine. I can do this. And also burlesque is very accepting of all body sizes, shapes, because again, it pokes fun of the fact that real bodies don't look like the bodies we see on TV and in magazines. Real bodies have flab or stretch marks. Real bodies have weird hips, weird thighs. Real bodies are very different. And as a society, if we looked at people with real bodies, if we looked at aging bodies and young bodies and thin bodies and fat bodies, most of us wouldn't be as locked into this whole idea of beauty that we're locked into right now, that it's a very artificial stereotype. I think we would be much healthier as a culture if we were able to look upon what a real body looks like at a whole variety of different ages and stages.
You're absolutely right. Of course, I've got my dad bod going, and I actually have been planning on doing one of those things you mentioned, like, oh, I have to, which is lose weight. And it's not for the fact that I want to look good. And I kind of do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to look good for myself.
We all do.
But it's more of the health factor. I don't want to be, in that stage of being pre-diabetic. I don't want to be in the stages of having a greater chance for cardiovascular disease. As you get older, and I'm in my 40s now. So it's, one of those things that I really got to think about what path I want to take to potentially extend my life from here on out.
Yes, absolutely. And those are all such valid reasons. And when you're doing activity that brings you joy and you look forward to your workouts, not only because it's good for you, but because it's a fun thing to do, then you do become much more healthy, much more fit because it's recess. Really, our workout time should be our adult recess time, not our, I have to go do this time.
I can't remember where I read this, but I was reading an article once that said that if you take people and you take pictures of them having and enjoying life, and then you take them where they're just either serious or they're not really enjoying it, and you ask a couple people, who do you think's in this category of older, younger, and a lot of times they'll put the happier people, even though they look older, in a younger category than what they actually are. It may not be dramatic,
right?
But it's going to be something that, okay, I don't think he's 80. I think he's like 70, or, I don't think she's 30. She's like 22, just because of how they appeal and how they have this, what seems like an aura or a presence around that image.
Absolutely. I absolutely believe that because I know, and you probably have experienced the same thing too, when you're having fun, you feel better. Joints don't ache as much when you're dancing or doing something that you really enjoy or singing at the top of your lungs or when you're out with people and you're doing something fun. You don't notice pain. You only notice joy, and you end up doing more and feeling better and absolutely looking younger.
My chiropractor mentions a lot about that too, because he's like, a lot of problems that we have is because we don't move enough.
Yeah.
He says you don't have to go running. You don't have to do all these vigorous exercises. You just got to move.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. We sit around way, way too much as a society now. And, we're behind our iPhones, our iPads, our computers, whatever you may have, our TVs even, and just we're glued when we come home. And to be honest, I mean, I don't blame anybody, because when I come home a lot of times, I can be in those mental exhaustion states.
Yes. But have you ever noticed when you're mentally exhausted, if somebody talks you into a bike ride or a walk or something, suddenly the energy starts flowing. You start bringing more oxygen into the lungs. The oxygen comes into your muscles and you start feeling better and more alert, because we're really just big kids. And, think about an elementary school class. When the kids get lazy and tired and falling asleep, you need a recess. You need to jump up. You need to go do something fun. And kids don't get tired. And part of the reason that they don't get tired is that they continue to play. They continue to move into doing things for the sake of doing them because they feel good. And as adults, we just punish ourselves a lot. If something feels good and it's just fun, we kind of think we shouldn't do it.
You're right. I mean, it's funny because, like, when you finally do go out with those group of friends that you can connect with, and maybe you haven't went dancing, and who knows, since you're maybe 25 or 30, but you finally go out and you hit the, go to Nashville or something, and you're out on the town listening to all these other things, and you get the urge to dance, and you may regret it the next day when you're sore, but during that time, the entire night, you don't care. You're enjoying everything. The endorphins are releasing, and you're just having a great time.
Exactly.
And I can understand that.
And it doesn't matter what it is. I often tell people, go back to what you love. Did you love jumping on your bike and racing down the hill? Did you love swinging on the bars? Did you love, what was it that you loved? Kicking a ball around? just connect with something, because we are physical beings and we are meant to move. And it doesn't have to be so regimented, and we don't need to check our heart rate and do it for a certain number of, hours or minutes. Or just go play. If you think about play every day, suddenly your fitness level starts to soar because you're doing what the body is supposed to do.
So let's actually migrate, because there's something else I want to talk about, which I think is a really, really super cool concept that you came up with, which corresponds with your book.
Yes.
FLAUNT.
Yes.
FLAUNT is really, really cool concept. And can you explain how you came up with FLAUNT and what it stands for? Because I think it'll be better coming from you than for me to read it out.
Oh, absolutely. FLAUNT is an acronym, and it stands for Find Your Fetish, Laugh Out Loud, Accept Unconditionally, Navigate the Negative, and Trust in Your Truth. And how I came up with it was, as I started developing my practice, I started working with men and women and children, and people would come to me, and I'm a hypnotherapist, and I do a whole variety of body, mind, spirit, use a whole variety of body, mind, spirit modalities with people, and I would start seeing people. And it would always come back to the same thing. It didn't matter if they came to me for weight loss or stop smoking or, finding their purpose. It always came back to the fact that people weren't that happy and they didn't exactly know what it was they wanted. So I developed these 5 steps just over time working with people, because everybody who came to see me always came back to saying, I don't really know what I want. And these were the 5 steps that I developed that help people get in touch with themselves, find that joy inside, really take the lead in their own life and figure out what the heck it is that they want. And it was really kind of funny, because once I started incorporating the concepts of burlesque into my work, this word just literally came to me, and I thought, oh my goodness, these are the steps that I'm walking people through, and it still spells flaunt. And when I use the concept of spiritual burlesque, which is revealing yourself as you are, not as you think you should be, the word flaunt is just so perfect. So in a way, I think, wow, this is too perfect. Burlesque is revealing yourself, which is kind of flaunting. And these are the 5 steps that I've been doing with people. And I kept thinking, this kind of isn't me. This has like spirit moving through me or something, because I couldn't have come up with something this perfect.
And that is totally fascinating, the way people just come up with these ideas. Now, and I've got to kind of go back to the very beginning where you were just talking about some of the stuff here, that you work with children. So how does FLAUNT work with children when you have the word fetish? Because a lot of people associate the word fetish with sex.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. If you've seen the movie Dumbo, Dumbo has his feather, and he believes that he can fly if he's got his feather. He believes the feather is that magical thing. That's actually one of the true definition of fetish, is a magical object believed to have powers. So when working with children, I will talk about Dumbo's fetish and explain that. And sometimes I don't use the word fetish. If they're older and they can understand definitions, that's one thing. I work with a lot of high schoolers. But younger kids understand the concept of Dumbo's feather and the belief that it's magical and that the magic was never outside of him. It was always within. So for young children, that's how I do it.
That's really cool, because, I mean, I know there's going to be somebody who's like, okay, how do you tie that in and how do you separate that? Because me knowing definitions, not everybody knows the true definition of fetish. You're like, what's your fetish? Hey,
Exactly.
And it's one of those things. It's always like one of those kinky taboo things, but it's not necessarily always the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to point that out as well. So we have these concepts of flaunt, and you go through, you build in this new practices, you start taking your steps. How did that migrate from developing these steps into writing your book?
It was interesting because I wrote my book for about probably over 10 years. And my book started off as case studies and notes because I would test things out and people would come in and I think, I'm a lawyer. I'm always looking for the root cause of things. So I would write everything down and I'd see clients and I'd write down what happened and I would write down what I told them to do and I would write down the results. And pretty soon I thought, oh my gosh, I kind of have a book going here. I've got, the different steps. I've got case studies, and I need to get serious and get the word out because I can't spread the information one person at a time. I need, a bigger vehicle to get this information out. So that's why I started doing the book.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually, and being able to see that it come to fruition from case studies that you were just writing about to being able to compile them into an actual physical medium it's really interesting in my eyes too. It's like, okay, well, it shows you that you don't have to be in a hurry to do anything, but sometimes when you got something,
Right. Yeah. And it was very much from a place of curiosity. And again, the lawyer in me wanting to follow things along and find that root cause. And this was, me proving to myself, oh, this step works. And oh, this step works. And of course, along the way, I modified things and I would switch my modalities around. But that gave me the confidence then that what I finally landed on absolutely works.
So I'm going to ask too, because I have not read the book, and I'll be honest there on that part because I haven't had a chance to, and I could have asked you for a copy, but that wasn't the focus of me getting you on the show. It was to talk about all these different concepts, and and we are talking about the book because I think it's a big part of what made you.
Right.
And that's the reason I'm adding it in here. But one of the things I read some of the snippets here and there and the empowerments. How can this relate? And I'm going to say it this way because it's going to be very specific, to a straight male. And I already say that. And the reason I say that is because so much burlesque is into your influence. How can you relate and identify with a particular straight male, or even in certain cases, a lesbian or whoever? How can you break it down for each person, type, personality, and identification?
I'm so glad you asked that because we all wear masks. We are all covered by labels, rules, scripts, and expectations. And take a white male. What can a white male not do? A white male can't cry. Oftentimes, white men can't also let emotion show. A white man tends to have to know all the answers. He is at the top. He has got privilege. He has got whatever it is. There is always a list of things that you can't do. If you identify as a lesbian, there's things that you will be butch, you will wear this, you're not going to like girly clothes. Whatever it is, there's all of these rules and gender norms and societal norms and cultural norms around who we are. And the fact is, most of us don't fit those norms. Think about little boys being raised in our world. It's big boys don't cry. It's walk it off. It's, boys are covered with labels and told how to act. A gentleman does this. Just like women or, anybody of a different race, culture, creed, sexual identity. And the power of burlesque is it's taking off those labels and it's being able to stand in your own raw, authentic truth, and to maybe say, yes, I am a big, burly, manly man, and I'm very touched by this, and I'm crying, and I'm feeling emotion strongly, and I don't have the answer, and I'm afraid right now. And it's holding space for the idea of what somebody should be like, and allowing them to incorporate who they are.
Gotcha. See, that's why I ask those questions sometimes, is how do we tie everything in and make it work for everybody? That is so cool. And one other thing I want to bring up, too, before I just let you shamelessly plug yourself, is when I looked at your business card that you attached to the email when we were corresponding with each other for this, you actually put down something very interesting on there that I am totally in love with, which is you're not a life coach, you're a life choreographer. And to me, every life coach should be a choreographer and not a coach, because a coach is just like, oh, yeah, you're doing it that way, but a choreographer is also going to lay out some plans for you. You don't necessarily have to take every single step.
Exactly.
But they're going to lay it out into a pattern and a play. Okay, here's a path you can take. Here's this you can take versus oh yeah, it looks like you're doing better. You gotta, you're actually giving them steps to follow versus saying, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also a choreographer takes into account what is. If you're going to choreograph a number, you have to look at the size of the stage, the lighting, the skill and the talent of the different dancers, the costumes. You take into consideration everything that's there, and then you see what you can create because of that. Whereas a coach oftentimes doesn't take those different things into consideration. It's just like, go, here's the skill, go. And I really believe that our lives are beautiful dances and that we should take the lead in the dance of our life. And that's why I say I'm a choreographer, because I will take into consideration what is there, and then let's see what we can create, and let's see what beauty and magic can happen. And then again, when something happens in sports, oftentimes it's win or lose. You put yourself out there, you win or lose. Whereas in dance, in choreography, things happen and you recover and you go on with the show, because the show must go on. And it's not just win or lose. It's how are we playing out this dance, and how are we making the best of every moment in the moment that we're in.
I love that. So, I do something similar for what I do on my personal side, which is I do a lot of voice work and creative work, like this show here. And on my personal email for my personal account at Jonathan Mertz, which I always include on there in the email, CEO, C a period EO, and then but under out to the side of it in parentheses, it says creative expert on call.
Yes. And I love that.
So it makes people think, you see CEO, and then all of a sudden it's over here, and you're like, oh, now I get what he's trying to come across with. Make them think a little different outside the box instead of a chief executive officer, which, technically I could be my own chief executive officer of myself, but me, I want to build on creativity, and I want to show that.
Yes. Exactly, and I love that.
Lora, thank you so much for coming on the show, but I want to give you the opportunity to give yourself a couple free plugs, how people can get a hold of you, how they can follow you on social media, and where they can buy your book.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. My website is LoraCheadle.com, and the way I spell Lora is Lora, which is a little different, LoraCheadle.com. And if they go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, they can actually download a copy of my free ebook. It's called 15 Ways to Flaunt Today. And that's just 15 ideas that you can use today to stand into your truth and to just express yourself a little bit more fully and a little bit more freely. On Facebook, I've got what is called the FLAUNT Flock, and that's my Facebook group, and I provide a lot of education, do weekly free videos, and people can just connect with other people and ask questions and find the support that they need. Of course, people can email me at Lora@LoraCheadle.com, and again, it's Lora. You can get an autographed copy of my book on my website, or you can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold.
Lora, thank you again so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this. It's actually pretty eye-opening.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it too.
This episode of It's Your Break was not a paid advertisement. Follow Jonathan Mertz on Twitter at Jonathan Mertz. That's JONATHANMERTZ. Follow It's Your Break on Twitter at It's Your Break. Subscribe to the It's Your Break podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the iHeartRadio app. This episode of It's Your Break was hosted, announced, engineered, edited, and produced by Jonathan Mertz. And it was recorded and produced at the Spark of Vision Studios. All sound effects and music were purchased through Sound Ideas, Pro Sound Effects, iStock, and Spark of Vision. It's Your Break is owned and distributed by Spark of Vision. Copyright It's Your Break. All rights reserved.